souls who've decided to come in, and maybe they've been trading off lifetimes where sometimes they're the abuser and sometimes they're the abusee. And they've done this and done this and done this, and suddenly one of the souls is like, okay, I've had enough of this, but I'm going to go back in one more lifetime and experience it with the knowing that this time I have enough.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Wetzel, and I am so excited to have Tracy Juechter with me today. And we're going to talk about soul overlays. It's not a topic or conversation that is in the mainstream. And so when I heard that Tracy does soul overlay work, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk about this. So
Well, thank
Tracy,
you so much
welcome,
for
and thank you
having
for being
me.
here with me. Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. So you do all kinds of work besides just the soul overlay work. So just so everybody knows, you do all kinds of ascension work to help people to ascend on their path and do that. But we're not going to focus on all of the other beautiful things that you do. We're going to kind of just stick with the soul overlay topic. So again, thank you for being here. And can you tell us just a little bit about you, what you do, and what led you to the soul overlay work?
Yeah. So originally I was doing body work, and I'd been doing it really informally since 7th grade, but with clients in sessions, having the training and everything for a couple of years. And, I already lived in Santa Fe, and it's very new agey here. And, we got into all the topics. And just out of curiosity, one day I thought, I wonder what would happen if I asked people's sacred higher self or their angels or their guides to come, to be present for the massage session, for the bodywork session. What could they add? What could they, help me understand about what my clients need? And it was pretty instantaneous for me of being given guidance like move their body in this rhythm, or tell them this, or I could get glimpses of the angels being with them, holding them, supporting them as I was doing the work. And this became more and more important because I really became someone whose major focus through body work was actually trauma release work, working with people who had PTSD and all that. And so the insights from their guides as to what needed to be cleared and how to clear it was just fabulous. And so then when Peter and I started going more into being ascension coaches and wanting to help people in a more spiritual way, exclusively rather than all the physical stuff. It was a pretty natural shift because I was basically already channeling people's sacred higher self, although I certainly wouldn't have called that when I started it. I just thought of it as like intuition or inner guidance or something like that. But definitely throughout the course of working with people for almost 2 years now in this new way, it's been extraordinary how much it has shifted and changed the level of detail, the kind of very specific, visuals, all kinds of connection. Sometimes even smells come up as part of a hint of like, where are we? Like, what are you showing me that's gone on with their soul that needs to be cleared? And literally, sometimes it's a particular smell that helps me understand where we are and what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, fascinating. That is fascinating. So, so we've already determined that the subject is going to be soul overlays, and we're just going to touch just a little bit on what the average person knows is a soul contract, but we're going to change it a little bit, the wording of it, from a soul contract to a soul agreement. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this topic. So first of all, can you tell us what the difference is between a soul agreement and a soul overlay?
Yeah. So, and yes, the term soul contract does definitely get thrown a lot. And the reason I don't like to use that is I don't feel like it's a legal agreement at all. A soul agreement occurs generally when people are with soul family, not incarnate. And they are looking over the course of incarnations that they've had together and um, having kind of goals or uh, agreements with themselves that, like, I really want to go back in one more time with this pattern, but then this time succeed in breaking it. Right. So this could
Mhm.
be uh, souls who've decided to come in and maybe they've been trading off lifetimes where sometimes they're the abuser and sometimes they're the abusee, and they've done this and done this and done this, and suddenly one of the souls is like, okay, I've had enough of this, and but I'm going to go back in one more lifetime and experience it with the knowing that this time I have enough soul consciousness that even though I'm going to have the memory wipe and have to re-experience it, I'm going to find a way to be in love and forgiveness and help myself and as many others in my soul family who've been in this pattern to break out of it.
That's very important, and at this particular lifetime specifically, about how we're making these changes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes, even though we have that intent, we don't succeed, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
then that's what's so beautiful. It's never ending. We get another chance and another chance and another chance.
yeah.
And even with that agreement that's in place, um, once you enter and you're on a free will planet, it could be that circumstances in your life take you to something else that's so fascinating, so interesting to you, that you kind of like don't really have that drive anymore to be working on clearing the pattern that you thought you'd be working on.
Yeah.
Maybe you're opening up something totally different. Maybe you've
Mhm.
gotten fascinated about some other aspect of life and you're just diving into that because you're seeing that as what lights you up, what's the best service you can give to the planet, or and everything. And so that's your free will right to go moment to moment, with what's in your heart and what it is you're wanting to do.
Mhm. So, okay, so what's an overlay?
So, a soul overlay, and trust me, I had no idea what these were until I started giving sessions. I had never heard of this. I actually ended up having to coin the term because I couldn't find anything else that was like this. So, a soul overlay comes when in a previous life, let's say, and this is of the people that I see, I have to say, like, probably more than half have a soul overlay. And this, I think, happens especially to people who are older souls coming in and living with people who are younger souls, right? And so we're stepping up to be spiritual leaders. Oftentimes we might have gifts and abilities, right? And as we're using those gifts and abilities, just coming from our heart, being passionate about wanting to help others, suddenly there can be a big mishap, right? Like, let's say we have an amazing connection to divine, and we literally hear the divine, and the divine is helping us understand things, and we are then sharing those understandings with others. But unfortunately, those understandings do not align with what the current religion is or belief system of the people in our village or tribe or whatever. And so there can be anger, jealousy, fear. Like, what is this person saying? This is going against everything we believe, and this is dangerous. This is going to take people down a bad path. So possibly you face torture and death, or being kicked out of your village and tribe and being cast out alone and hungry or whatever. And so when that happens, because we are sovereign beings on a free will planet, we sometimes choose we mistakenly, as the humans we are, believe, okay, the problem is my connection to the divine. If I hadn't had that, none of this would have ever happened. And so there's this huge energy coming from the suffering, coming from, the isolation that you're experiencing or the torture or whatever. And you just go, never again. I will never, ever, ever allow this again. Well, guess what? You're sovereign. Your word is law. And you put this big energetic no on your soul, like, I'm not going to do this. And so what I have found is that these overlays, I can't say for if you go to another planet, but if you reincarnate back on Earth, those overlays remain with the soul until you have the awareness that it's there. And then once again, as a sovereign being, decide, oh no, I am done with this overlay. I am ready to have my full on connection to the divine or my spiritual gifts and beliefs, whatever it is, you can reclaim those.
Well, you just opened up a whole lot of questions. Okay, so I'm going to ask these questions, and I want everybody to know that's listening. I have heard about soul overlays for years, years and years and years and years, but I never really knew what one was. So I may be asking these questions from a very basic form because I just want to learn more, and I may be being a little bit selfish and doing this for me
No such
instead
thing.
of the public. So everybody hang in there because this is how this one's going to work. Um, so you've created this soul overlay. How do I understand or know that, like, in this particular lifetime, right here, right now, in 2025? How do I know that I have an overlay, and how would it manifest in my everyday life?
Okay. So we'll take this layer by layer. If you're someone that, already knows some form of dowsing, right?
Mm.
Your body doesn't lie and your soul remembers this absolutely. So you could simply go within and ask, do I have a soul overlay? And maybe you get a yes, maybe you get a no. If you get a yes, or if you're someone who's not at that level where you can douse something or muscle test yourself or whatever, you can also look for it in, if you have, like, let's say you've had been someone who for moments of time you have this exquisite connection to the divine. You sense them, you feel the guidance or whatever, and then poof, it's gone.
Hmm.
And you're like, what happened to that? I loved having that connection to my divine. Where did it go? Right? And you're on your spiritual path and you're working on yourself, you're doing your clearings, and then there's another moment where it's really present and then it's gone again. This can be a likely symptom if you have a soul overlay. Because I don't know, maybe this isn't, I started using the term cellular memory, right?
Oh my
So,
God. My guides call it the cellular. That's exactly what. Are you
but like,
tapping into my guides? That's
this
exactly what.
aspect of your soul remembers how delicious life was when you had this connection to your divine and wants it back. And then there's this internal struggle because of the aspect of soul that has this overlay on it saying, no, no, no. We said we weren't going to go there. We weren't going to do that again. So it's like this kind of back and forth, this longing for something. If you have any kind of a longing, like you've heard people speak light language and you're like, oh my God, every time I listen to that, it lights up and it's like, I can feel like there's this energy trying to come up and out of me, but then you just don't have that ability. That could be a sign that you have a soul overlay around having spiritual gifts or abilities,
Mm.
right? That it's like some aspect of you knows, yeah, I am meant to be doing this. And
Mhm.
yet somehow, as much as you ask and allow, I'm gonna do this. I'm watching all these shows and I'm saying, yes, this is gonna start flowing out of me. And then somehow it doesn't, or it's very little and just little dribbles, and it never really feels certain or full. Then that can be another way you have a soul overlay.
So what is an overlay? Is it like is it, I mean, I don't know if you can get that technical, but is it like a blockage in the memory? Is it like an energetic thing that's over that specific part of the soul's memory? Or I mean, how does this
Yeah,
work?
when I feel them, it's like a dense webbing, like a dense created from an emotional state, a really strong emotional state. And it's like a webbing that just creates um, a blockage between you being able to connect to the energies that would take you back to that spiritual gift or ability or that level of connection to the divine or whatever it was you put the soul overlay about. They don't necessarily always have to be spiritual. There's people who have an overlay against being a teacher or leader, but that isn't in the spiritual realm, right? Maybe they were just someone who had a lot of vision about a better system of governance, let's say. And they were realizing that people were not being treated the way they should. The system was keeping some people down. And so they went into organizing people to rise up against whatever it was that was keeping them in poverty or, um, in not having any personal freedom and not having any time for themselves or whatever it was. And so maybe organize a big uprising. And then unfortunately, it's found out by the people you were rising up against that you were the leader of this. And maybe they take your family and torture them, right? And so it's like too painful, too much of you feel punished, you feel like, oh my God, I was just trying to do something that was great. And instead, it has this horrible consequences. Nothing got accomplished out of it. Lots of people got hurt because of what I did. And so I don't ever want to be a leader again.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just don't want to step into any kind of role of power because it's just not going to work out well.
So, okay, so I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around this. So, is it kind of like a blockage to the memory of it?
Yeah. Well, it's an energetic blockage that I feel like it gets triggered when you start taking action steps towards that similar thing,
Okay.
right? And
Uh-huh.
so people that I've worked with is like, "Oh my gosh, no wonder every time I'm offered a position of leadership, I just like make some excuse, feel this terror come up in my heart for no reason that I can remember this lifetime. I never had a bad experience being a leader, but it's like I just want to turn around and run. Well, no, 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 not me. Let somebody else do that."
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that's the overlay energetically keeping you from saying yes to anything that would take you down that same track.
Okay, because I like that example. But what's coming up in my mind when you're asking that question is how do we determine a belief system, compared to an overlay? So, for example, like just what you said, a leadership position, and I don't feel that I'm worthy of this position, or due to childhood trauma, I've always felt small and I couldn't succeed. So, if I got promoted, I know that I wouldn't be good at it because of my belief system of my past. So, can you compare the two to where people can kind of discern
Yeah,
between the
good
two?
question. Okay. I wanna let my team chime in on this because
Okay.
this is a subtle difference.
Yeah.
Okay. So most of the time when it's a belief system, we have either memories of experiences or being told messages about, oh, you shouldn't even try that. You wouldn't be any good at that. Or having tried something and failed, right? Even if it was a very early attempt, we ran for class president and we didn't get it. And there's this feeling of failure and stuckness. Um, it could be we don't have memories because super early childhood stuff can come up, right? Just that we inherit beliefs about our stuff from our parents, or we love our parents and they have energetically tried to steer us away from like a leadership position or something like that.
Yeah.
For most of the time when I'm working with people and it's a soul overlay, they have more of a sense when they discover it's there that, like, oh, no wonder, because I was always attracted. I like wanted to say yes. I wanted to be a leader. People kept seeing me as a leader. They kept saying, "Oh, you would be really good at this. Please, we want you to step up and do this. We want you to, run this part of this operation, or, be the one who communicates about this." And even though a part of you agrees with them and thinks you would be good at it, you find yourself kind of irrationally just saying, "Oh, no, 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 no. I can't. Don't ask me to do that. I don't want to do that."
Hmm. Okay. So we have to start feeling into how we're reacting to people, or just not to people, but to situations, to
Yeah.
where we can
The
start figuring out
situations
if
can
it's a
be
belief
clues.
system. Yeah. Or the difference in the two. Um, okay. So this is kind of a repeat question, and I think I'm going to ask it anyway, just to make sure that everybody understands what you're saying, because I think that between the belief system and the overlay, I think it's really important for people to understand the difference. But how can somebody identify if they've experienced an overlay in the past? Now you've said this, I think, 3 times, but we're going to do it
Yeah.
one more time.
Um, I would say that using your inner wisdom or your ability to dowse, and then I can give you a little more information, like just beyond the basic, like, do I have a soul overlay? I have found there's categories of them that you can dive in a little bit deeper to sense into. And the first category I would say are spiritual overlays. And these are blockages to connecting with your divine, blockages to having spiritual gifts and abilities, or blockages to being a spiritual teacher or leader. Um, Another category is what I would either call political or social injustice overlays, right? Where someone has stepped up in the past as a person who was either maybe just a great thinker, right? Maybe just someone who was writing incredible books about a new concept for how merchandising could work, right? Or trade could work, or something. It could be really anything.
Mhm.
And they put these thoughts and beliefs out there, and they are so different, so in opposition to the people who are already the successful merchants and how they have been operating for years, that they have um, a huge reaction to you trying to shift people into this new idea of how this should work. And so they just use their wealth and power to have you defamed, or to have you captured and tortured, or just outright killed, or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then, you know, people are just like, okay, well, it's not worth the risk. I don't ever want to stick my neck out again to try and transform humanity in whatever way I'm trying to transform it, if it's just going to come back on me or my family or whatever. Another layer is what I call guilt or shame overlays. And these can come it from situations where using our own either con- our intelligence or our ability to have spiritual gifts or beliefs, but we go ahead and like create a technology. And then it turns out that that technology backfires in some way that we could never have understood. And we know we are responsible for what happened, for all the people who died, or for, a section of the planet that got ruined, or whatever it is. And so, in that moment of understanding that, we think, okay, I am dangerous. I should never be allowed to do this again. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to make sure that I never, ever, ever decide to become someone who's, super advanced in whether it's a new level of technology or a new level of medicine or a new level of any aspect. And the truth, though, is that by the time you would be someone who was aware enough to say, oh my gosh, I don't want anything like that to ever happen to anybody else because of something I've done, guess what? The soul's already learned the lesson, it's already evolved. And you don't have to worry that you ever would do something like that again in another incarnation. But unfortunately, as the human we are in that moment, terrified, aghast at what just happened, we feel like, oh no, I'm the problem. I got to make sure like I don't ever do something like this again. And the overlay gets put in place.
Those were good examples. That makes sense to me. So now I'm not gonna keep harassing you about it. So please, you don't need any more explanations. I think I finally got it. Yay!
happy to
Uh,
happy to
yeah,
answer. If you have those questions, everybody out there has those questions.
yeah. Well, it is kind of it's kind of interesting to be able to figure out because we I don't think that we truly have the obviously we don't fully understand the capacity of the soul, everything that is intertwined and how all of these layers are wrapped up in the soul's journey and how to be able to figure out how to unwind all of these experiences and the things that the soul holds on to. So, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So, is the soul is an overlay always? I mean, I don't know if it's really is it a negative thing or is it a protection thing?
That I've seen, it's always coming out of um, fear of a repetition of a really extremely terrible situation.
So does it serve as is it almost kind of like a survival instinct as well? I mean, you think that we
Yeah, I mean,
subconsciously can set
actually,
it up
though, I
in
mean,
place?
oftentimes people are putting the overlay on as they're dying, right? They've
Yeah.
already been tortured, they're being starved, they're being whatever, and they know they're going to die. And the agony of what they've gone through is really what motivates them to think, okay, never again. I'm just
Huh.
not ever going to step up into it, which is kind of interesting. It was always kind of curious for me because I'm like, did people even understand that they reincarnate when they did this? Why would they bother if they're already just about to die?
Yeah.
But a spirit just said, you're not really rational in those moments where something that's going on, you're in super high negative emotional states and you're really just seeking anything you can possibly do in your power to make sure this is never going to happen again. And you don't even know you're doing it, right? People
Yeah.
creating the soul overlay, they don't understand that's what they're doing. They're just emotionally going, never again. I don't ever want this.
Okay. So, well, that just created another question. So,
Okay.
so the overlays get put on the soul or over that experience when I'm still in my human form.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to figure out that's
Yes,
what
it
that
is
bro
the
yeah,
sovereign
because what
human who makes this
the decision.
command.
Okay, yes, and I think you probably said that at the beginning of this conversation, but it just now finally
No, it's much
sunk
more
in.
clear now.
Cool. Okay, so do th do the I mean, I understand that these overlays can prevent us from excelling in certain areas wherever it's affecting, but does it have a mental or an emotional effect on people?
Yeah, and sometimes even physical. So, I think it's best to just give an example about this. So there was a woman I was working with, and she was really wondering, like, why she couldn't have a connection to the divine. She's like, I've been at work at this for so long, and I get it in little moments here and there, and then it's gone again, and I don't understand, you know. And so when her sacred higher self was talking to me, they took me and showed me a lifetime where she was a man and she owned a mine.
Mm,
And much like the consciousness of all the other people alive at that time, they used children for the labor because his was particularly gem mining, and the children had tinier hands and could get better into cracks and release the gems and stuff. I mean, everybody, not just children. And they didn't particularly pour a lot of their profit back into making the mines safe. They were dilapidated and people worked long hours and whatever, and they were just all into the consciousness of making the most they could out of their mine. But this man developed this connection to one child who worked there, a little girl, who just always had the brightest, happiest demeanor. And she was always so excited and happy to see him, even though it just meant, she was on her way to a really long work day and being exhausted and dirty and all that kind of stuff. Her bright smile shone through all of that. And he just loved seeing her, and, was always hoping she would happen to pass by when he was, visiting the mines or outside the mine or whatever. And then inevitably, all his lack of care for the mine led to a collapse, and many died, and she was one of them. And that woke him up in that moment to, like, realizing these are not just tools that I can, like, send down into the mine to do things. These are humans. And this little girl meant a lot to me. And I'm sure all those other people meant as much to other people. And so I realized what a terrible person I am. And just this feeling of guilt and shame, and also the fact that his lack of care for the mine also meant his family would now be in poverty, because they were not going to be able to rebuild this anytime soon, and he had spent the money on other things rather than saving it to repair the mine. And so in that feeling completely terrible, and that they were just an awful person and should never be allowed to have any kind of ownership of something ever again.
mhm.
Um, the overlay was created. And it also tied into a feeling like, I don't deserve to have a family. I don't deserve to ever have children. Like, I just abuse people. I'm an abuser, and I don't deserve to have a happy life or a good life or any kind of connection. And what was so interesting was, the woman who came to me for a session was dealing with such severe endometriosis that she was not able to be getting pregnant. And then she also had asthma and COPD, right? Things that affect the lungs.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main detriments to people who work in a mine, is that it really creates issues with their lungs. So it was just so interesting that at a certain level, her soul overlay was causing her to experience physically um, the things that she felt like she didn't deserve as that former self. And so there was a big, like, release of energy and understanding and forgiveness in the process that we do to release the soul overlay. One aspect of it includes welcoming in the former self and allowing the current self and the former self to uh, communicate with each other, to share any messages of love and empathy and experiencing like what the being was going through when they created the overlay, and then allowing that former being to feel this, wow, look where my soul is now, look at this person, and feel their energy field. Wow, things have really changed too, even on Gaia. We invite them to notice the frequency of Gaia, and then we ask the former self, would they like to assist us in releasing the soul overlay? And then there's just this beautiful merging with forgiveness and all these other different levels that occur. And then a huge acceleration in energy of just releasing the soul overlay as pure energy back to source, basically, is what we're doing. And it operates just out of the fact that once you are, again, a sovereign being on a free will planet, and so you have the right to ask for this to be down. And you don't actually even really need the permission of the former self. It's just so often it's such a beautiful thing to invite them into the field, and the magic that goes on between this deep communication, this deep feeling each other energetically, the being you were that had the soul previously and the being you are now that has the soul.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You know, I keep, every time you're talking about these experiences, I just kind of keep finding myself going back to, you know, like people that may have, you know, I get asked a lot of questions about abundance and, you know, what's my blockage to having more abundance or more money, or, you know, those job thing, you know, like maybe I'm not getting promoted. And, you know, we immediately just jump into, well, it's your belief system, it's the trauma that you've experienced in some, you know, lifetime, or, you know, we never go as deep as that layer. So it's, yeah, I think it's really important for people to recognize that there may be additional work than what we've been exposed to get
Yeah.
down to that soul level.
And I've absolutely seen that as well.
Yeah.
There was one overlay that was about someone who had a lot of spiritual gifts and abilities. She was amazingly well. She was a channel. She was intuitive, and she lived in Persia, and she was very unusual because she lived on her own, which is very unusual. And she was wealthy, right? Because she, under the guise of reading cards, right? I'm going to do your cards and I'm going to, tell these things about you. It was way beyond cards for her, right? She had way more than just the ability to interpret cards. But so she would kind of manipulate through what she was doing. She could know like what it was these people were wanting to hear about themselves, or that would make them feel special or whatever. And most of her clients were like the wives of wealthy men. And so once she would get them hooked to come in, she would be telling them whatever they wanted to hear, right? Oh, if we just do this ceremony for you, you're going to be, able to do this, this, and this. But, it's going to cost some money to do this ceremony. We're going to need some very expensive perfumes and herbs and different things in order to make this ceremony. And so I'm going to need you to give me this much money so that I can buy this and we can do this ceremony for you, or whatever it was, right? And so, she was doing this all the time. Well, suddenly there was a moment where uh, some of these wives met each other and just started hanging out and being friends. And suddenly they started talking about their sessions that they had with this woman. And they found out, like, oh my gosh, she's pretty much been telling us all the same story. and asking us for all this money. And, come to think of it, have any of us actually gotten any of these powers she said we would have? No, she keeps leading us along. Well, now there's another thing we need to do, another thing we need to do, right?
Mhm.
So the husbands of these wives were so angry about this that they basically, went to where she lived, took anything they wanted of value, burned her house, left her with only the clothes she had on her back, and cast her out, and spread the word far and wide about who she was and what she had been doing. So after having this pretty lavish, wonderful life, suddenly she was, in complete poverty, having to beg, really like feeling the reality of like, oh my gosh, this is what happens when you manipulate other people. And this really sucks. This outcome really sucks. And
Mhm.
she did, through that experience, realize what I was doing was wrong. And honestly, I had a gift that I could have used just for good. And if I hadn't
Mhm.
gotten so greedy, it would have been plenty. But she felt so terrible about herself that she just thought, I don't deserve to ever have wealth. I don't deserve to have any spiritual gifts or abilities. I don't deserve, you know, to do to ever have a really great life again. And so, yeah, once we went in, and this woman had been having, the woman who came to me for the session had been having just incredible challenges trying to figure out how to have enough money to move forward. There was books she'd written, spiritual books that she really wanted to get published, all kinds of different things that she wanted to do. And yet there was just constant obstacles, and especially money.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting how all of this ties in together. We think that, it's always just right here in front of us. It's always just what happens right here, right now. But then when you start really looking into it, how many lifetimes ago is
Yeah.
this present life tied to? Yeah, how interesting. So, okay, so you remove the overlay.
Yeah.
Is that
Uh,
what is your magic? What do you do?
okay. So my magic is, first of all, when I'm working with people, we the, they permission my team, right? And I ask them to bring your team on, and we have this understanding that they are very powerful and they assist us in this. But the person who came, and it's whose soul overlay it is we're releasing, because they are sovereign, they initiate it, right? They go into their heart and they ask and allow that their team, my team, and any other beings of love and light in service to freeing us to be all we came to be, assist in the clearing. And then we do, kind of a call and response, which I'll share what I have found to be the important elements of it.
Mhm.
Um, so the person basically will say something along the lines of, like it was me, I, Tracy Juechter, now ask and allow that any soul overlay I created about, right, spiritual gifts and abilities or leadership or whatever, any soul overlay I created about that is now null and void. I ask and allow the joint spiritual team present to delete the frequency of this overlay throughout space time and within all aspects of my being, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Thus I have commanded, thus it is done. And then we sit in gratitude, allowing the team to comb through every aspect of the being, releasing it as pure energy. We invite in the former self into that field that's been created. And we begin to notice, like, wow, I really feel like this overlay is in my gut a lot. This is a place that feels very dense,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we connect to this former self and we're like, oh my God, I can feel how absolutely terrified you were about what was happening to you and how incredibly lost and abandoned you felt, so abandoned by your divine. Ugh, that is so horrible. I just want you to know I have such compassion and I understand totally why you created this overlay, right? And we just offer them whatever we feel like they would want to hear. It's okay. You were forgiven. You don't need to keep, being punished in this way. You did the best you could. You had free will. You were allowed to play in this arena, and you are still loved and accepted. And then we invite that former self to notice, we're going to say my soul, right? Notice where the soul is now. Notice like how many more incarnations they've been and how I really wanted to show up at this time. I really wanted to be here for this transition into the golden era and to help people like raise in consciousness so that we could get there sooner than later. And just feel my soul intention. And then beyond me, feel what's been going on with Gaia and how much she has changed and shifted. And once you've had a chance to notice that, I would love to know, beautiful former self, would you be willing to join in with me in releasing this overlay? And honestly, so far it's always been yes. I've never had in anybody's session their former self. Sometimes there's like still some concern, still some fear that we need to address with them
Mm-hmm.
first before they go ahead and say yes. But it's
Mm-hmm.
always ended up in yes. And then it's just like, whew, this amazing feeling like you're in this incredible energy vortex and just all that old frequency and energy of the soul overlay just comes flying out of your field. And we just sit and allow that to clear and keep being in gratitude that it's releasing from every single layer. And then at a certain point, their team or my team signals, okay, it's done, it's complete.
So now, did you develop this technique? Did I understand that correctly?
Well, people's sacred higher selves that I was channeling told me how to do this.
Okay. And so this came to you just a couple of years ago. This is
Yeah,
pretty new to
in the
you?
last couple of years, I had
Okay.
never, in my personal experience, never heard of a soul overlay or heard, I've heard about past lives, and there are times where some you just have a difficult past life, right? And you have that
Mhm.
cellular memory. Maybe you have unexplained neck pain, right? And it turns out you had a past life where you were hung by your neck, and there's
Yeah.
still cellular memory about that.
Yeah.
But the team has, distinguished between that, what is just cellular memory and what is cellular memory with this additional piece, this energetic never again, right?
Hmm.
Not going to let this happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's not really a blockage to once you understand like that your neck pain came from this past life,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to be aware of it and that can all just dissolve out. I don't, that's not the truth of my neck this lifetime. I don't need
Right.
to hold on to that energy from this
Yeah.
previous life anymore. And it's a
Yeah.
much simpler, just awareness and release.
Yeah, and that's what I found is a lot of times once that it's like you can struggle and struggle and struggle. And it's like I can't figure out why I'm feeling this way. I can't figure out what this neck pain is, and then all of a sudden when you have the epiphany of oh my gosh, this is where this came from, and then all of a sudden it's like everything I see it as everything starts unwinding,
Yep.
and it's this the energy will just start to dissipate once you can figure it out. But the hard part is the struggle and trying to I can't figure this out. It's like, what is this? And the struggle of that trying to figure it out, and then, actually figuring out what it is, and then having that emotional release. But I know that the experiences that I've had is that's why people like you are here to help us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I can't figure out what the knot is in my neck. I can't figure out, where did it instigate from, 15 lifetimes ago? How did this start? And so if I can't figure it out, then that's why we need Tracy. That's why we
Yeah,
need her
and,
to help.
even for me, right, when it's our stuff, it's so much harder to see, or it's way harder for me to do a reading for myself or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely it
There's
is.
some things, and I think especially with soul overlays, because there's this block, why would we even want you to know what
Yeah.
the block is? Otherwise, you
Yeah.
might release it and we might start doing this again, right?
Yeah.
So, but I always encourage people, try it for yourself, see what you can get, if you have a
Mhm.
strong enough connection, you might be able to like discern enough about what's there, and just through your intent and allowing, permissioning your team to release it, you
Mhm.
may be able to do this on your own, you know.
Mhm.
But if not, there's no shame whatsoever in reaching out for help. That's what we're here for each
Yeah.
other.
Well, I am a big believer in the helpers. I feel like, we can do a lot on our own, but sometimes we just need that little helping hand to get over the hump. So I feel that's important. Okay, so the other thing that I'm kind of curious about is, again, the soul agreements. And, like, so if I made the soul agreement to have the experience that I had, that now I'm overlaying, how does that work, to where if I'm in this lifetime and I still haven't completed that agreement because I'm blocking it on an energetic level, how does that help with the soul's growth or hinder the whole soul's growth?
Okay. Um, so the soul agreement is created when you are not incarnated, right? That is something that you decide, with other soul family members or whatever, that is something that you're going to do. And I guess I could see how you could put those together, that if you decided you were going to come in and release other members of your soul family from this negative pattern, but one of them had a soul overlay saying, I'm never going to get to be happy or fulfilled or have a relationship because I don't deserve it, or something like that. And then you're there trying to help all of your family members release out of the negative pattern and not feeling like they are worthy of a relationship or whatever. That there could be a conflict between those two things. Is that an example of what you were trying
Mhm.
to ask about? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say, I'm just going to ask my team because I don't know for sure. Hmm. The sense I get is that the soul overlay would probably be more powerful than the soul agreement.
Oh,
And
really?
so that they would still, yeah, isn't that wild?
Huh.
Um, as a part of the releasing the person, there would have to be the intent, this deeper understanding of the layers that you were going to, right? Because in just the soul agreement, you might be looking at the pattern the family had created, right? The ways they were abusing alcohol, or physically abusing the children, or emotionally abusing the children, and that whole pattern, and you're trying to
Mhm.
work out of that. And there's a lot that you can do from that level of understanding. But if this one member of your family, in addition to it, has this deeper level of overlay saying, I'm never going to allow myself, out of negativity, out of not deserving having a relationship or something like that. I think both will have to be addressed.
Yeah. 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 Because that's kind of putting a kink in the process.
Well, I do have to say, it's like amazing how multifaceted we are. Just when I think, okay, now I understand all the pieces, something new drops in, like inherited beliefs or.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. I mean, like we were talking earlier, my gosh, there's so many layers and dimensions of all of who we are that, gosh, I bet we just know just a sliver, just a teeny bit of all of the steps and the processes and everything about how we work. It's really pretty amazing. So is there anything that you'd like to share about any of the overlays or soul agreements that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Um, I'm trying to think if there's an example of one that we haven't really kind of covered. Um, I guess I just want to make things a little more hopeful, given what we just said for people, which is that, you know, at another level, everything from past lives and for whatever presents itself in this lifetime as an opportunity for us to understand that it's in us somewhere. Something inside us is creating this experience we're having outside of ourselves. And I also have to believe that as we are accelerating into the golden era and as we are all beginning to connect much more deeply, not just to our own uh, personal divine, but intergalactic beings or all kinds of other energies that are making themselves available to us at this time, that there will likely be something, a tipping point where the energy field is so strong that we'll begin to be able to just ask for it all, right? Like, it no longer serves me or humanity or earth to be limited in any way. And so now
Mhm.
I'm just going to ask and allow that anything preventing me from being the most powerful version of myself that I can be, so that I am doing everything necessary to really move us into this golden era. I'm just going to ask and allow, even if I don't get to understand it, even if I don't get to ask for it piece by piece. I think we will get there. I don't have a sense of how long that will take, but I absolutely feel things are accelerating more and more and more, and our levels of understanding about everything are just increasing so much. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think eventually we will all just be gifted with a clearing of blockages and we will just be moving forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that message because it's actually really powerful. And by just having the permission to be able to think that or to start to explore what that really means starts opening up those energy patterns and and breaking the old blockages down so that we can be more available to what's out there. So thank you for sharing that, and again, thank you for having this conversation with me. I loved it.
And I
So
do too want to make sure that people understand, like, my husband Peter, he also gives sessions, and we are really committed to doing what it takes to help enough people rise up in their consciousness enough that we will get to this golden
yeah,
era, and sooner than later, right? At one point,
absolutely.
Spirit shared with us, like, oh, you're going to get there no matter what. it'll probably take 400 years if people aren't actively really working it, but it'll happen no
Mhm.
matter what. But
Yeah.
we also heard from them like, oh no, if people, lots of people are really actively engaging and helping other people raise in consciousness and do the clearing work and stuff. You might get there in
Yeah.
40 years. And we're
Right.
kind of motivated because we want to live to see it.
Yeah. Well,
So I
I've
just,
been witnessing it. Yeah. I mean, it's every single day. I mean, I talk to somebody, people I have sessions with, and I'm constantly dumbfounded. Like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, there are the most amazing humans on this earth.
yep.
And it's this shift is happening, and it may not be happening as fast as we want it to, but it is happening. We're witnessing this shift, and again, it's an honor for the work that you and Peter do is amazing. And for our listeners, how can people find you?
Okay. So the best way is to go to our website, which is BecomingAwesome.one, which is .one, one spelled out, BecomingAwesome.one. And I want people to understand too that we each give 2 days a week where our sessions are on a donation basis
Mm,
because we want to make sure everyone has access. And it's not that we're independently wealthy or anything like that. We're like everybody else. And we don't want to leave people out. People
yeah,
can give based on, what it was worth and their means that they have to be able to give. Um, and for others that, have the means and maybe want to get in sooner, there's 2 days a week where they're paid sessions. We also have a lot of free stuff on our web stuff, abundance tools, and
mm,
other processes you can use just by joining at the community level. We make a lot of tools available for people that they can use on their own time.
yeah.
Um, so that's the best place to reach us.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, and what great offerings you guys have. And again, it's so fun to talk to people that are on this ascension path, and and assisting others. And so, for all of you listeners and watchers, when you start getting curious and start asking the questions about what's shifting and changing in me, go see Tracy and Peter. That'll be a good place for you to start.
And you
So,
can
thank you.
also catch us channeling on YouTube, also called Becoming Awesome. If you search that in YouTube, we have a channel and we each channel a variety of different beings. It keeps increasing all the time. I've been having so much fun talking to Isis and what I call the crones of all ages and all kinds of beings. And people can always put their questions there as well, too, if there's a specific they'd like asked of um, whatever goddess, spirit, angel. And we'll do our best when we next channel to try and get those questions answered.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Again, Tracy, thank you for being here. And for all of you guys that are watching, thank you for watching. And I hope to see you next time.
Thank you again, Lisa. It was really lovely being with you.
Thank you.